Hey guys. Tonight we're stepping somewhere no sane person would ever call home. It's wet, it's cold, it smells like rust, fear, and yesterday's socks. Welcome to the trenches of World War I. Imagine a narrow ditch carved through sticky mud, stretching for miles, where everything you own is damp and everything you touch squishes. You can't even sit without sinking a little. Every surface seems alive with mold or something that wants to bite you. If you've ever complained about camping in the rain, trust me, you wouldn't last 10 minutes here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch low, boots already half swallowed by the muck. Rain trickles down the back of your neck like a cold finger tracing your spine. It's been falling for days. And the trench, your home, is nothing but a soup of filth. Every step makes a sucking sound, like the earth itself is reluctant to let go of you. The walls ooze, reinforced by rotting planks and sandbags that smell of mold and something faintly metallic. Your uniform, once crisp, now hangs heavy and sour. You think back to when you first put it on, how proud you were. How it almost fit. Now it's just a soggy rag that clings to your skin like regret. You can't even remember the last time your feet were dry. There's a condition for that, trench foot. They call it. It starts with numbness, then swelling, and before long, your toes look like something you'd find floating in the soup pot. Someone nearby coughs, wet and hoarse. It echoes down the line, blending with the steady patter of rain and the distant rumble of artillery. That rumble never really stops. It's not like thunder, it's more like the growl of some great monster that lives just beyond the horizon, constantly reminding you it's awake. You've grown used to it. In the same way one grows used to toothache, resentfully, but helplessly. When you peek over the edge of the trench, all you see is gray. The sky, the ground, the wire, the smoke, it's all one endless smear of mud-colored misery. The landscape looks like it's been chewed up and spat out by giants. Not a single tree left standing. Just blackened stumps and craters filled with water that gleams like dirty mirrors. You wonder if the world has always been this color. And you simply forgot the blue. Somewhere to your left, a man mutters to himself. Maybe he's praying, maybe he's cursing. Hard to tell the difference here. Everyone has their rituals. Some light a cigarette before dawn. Others whisper to photos tucked inside their jackets. You stare at your hands, trying to remember what they looked like before they were perpetually brown and cracked. There's a superstition among the men. If the trench rats start to gather around a section, expect a shell to hit there soon. You glance at the fat, bold rodents scurrying along the wall. And you decide not to think too hard about that. They're fearless. Those rats. They climb over boots, rifles, even sleeping men. You once saw one drag off a piece of bread half its size. Looked prouder than any general. You pull your coat tighter. But it's pointless. The cold here isn't just temperature, it's a presence. It seeps into your bones. Whispers into your ears, slows your thoughts. You start to understand why soldiers sometimes just stop. Stop eating, stop talking, stop being. The officers call it shell shock. You call it exhaustion of the soul. Someone shouts for a shovel. The trench walls collapsing again. You move to help. Because that's what you do. No one survives alone down here. The mud clings to everything. Thick as guilt. You dig. You curse. You slip. A joke passes between two men, something about how, after this, they'll never complain about rain again. It's not even funny, but you laugh anyway. In a place like this, laughter is rebellion. A few meters away, a body's half buried in the wall. You pretend not to notice. You always pretend. There's no ceremony here, no time for grief. The war eats the living too fast. Maybe that's why some men name the rats after their fallen friends. It's a way of keeping them close. In the strangest, saddest sense. Later, as the rain eases into a drizzle, you find a moment to lean back and breathe. The air tastes of gunpowder and decay. You close your eyes, and for half a heartbeat, you could almost imagine you're somewhere else. Maybe sitting by a fireplace. Maybe listening to the hum of a city far away. Then a whistle blows, sharp and shrill, dragging you back, always back. You hear the distant booming again. It's artillery. Somewhere ahead, the sound rolls toward you like thunder rolling down a tunnel, shaking the boards under your boots. Mud splashes against your face. Warm and foul. You don't even flinch anymore. You just wipe it away and keep your head down. Night falls. Not that it looks much different. The darkness here is a living thing. It presses close. Thick with mist and the faint glow of cigarette tips. You huddle near a flickering lamp, sharing a tin of something that claims to be stew. It tastes like tin, despair, and a hint of mystery meat. Luxury. One soldier jokes. You smirk, spoon poised midair, and mutter, "Better than the mud." Everyone chuckles softly. In this place, humor isn't about joy, it's about staying sane. When you finally lie down, you can feel the earth breathing beneath you. The ground shifts, sighs, groans like it's tired of holding so much death. You stare up at the invisible sky, listening to distant gunfire, and think, maybe tomorrow it will stop. But deep down, you know it won't, not yet. The last thing you notice before drifting off is the rain starting again. Gentle at first, then steady, like the world reminding you who's really in charge. Somewhere, an officer's whistle echoes faintly. Somewhere, a rat squeaks. And somewhere inside you, a small, stubborn voice whispers, "You're still alive." Sleep doesn't come easy in the trenches. But for tonight, at least, you close your eyes. The rain doesn't stop. It never really does. It just changes moods. Sometimes a drizzle that teases you with hope. Sometimes a downpour that feels like punishment. You wake up soaked. Again, the water has seeped through your blanket, through your coat, through your skin. You can't remember the last time you felt dry. Everything here smells like wet canvas, rot, and iron. The trench, once solid, now squelches underfoot like something alive. When you stand, mud pulls at your boots with a sickening slurp. You half expect it to whisper, "Stay." Your toes are pale, soft, and tender. One more day like this and they might start to peel. You think of all the things you took for granted: socks, sunlight, and the ability to walk without sinking into filth. Luxury. You murmur, shaking your head. The man next to you, private hall, laughs. Luxury? That's when your boots come off with your feet still attached. He grins through cracked lips. And you both chuckle. Humor here is gallows rope, it keeps you upright. You look down the line. The trench stretches endlessly, a jagged scar across the earth. Sandbags slump under the weight of the rain. Boards have warped and split. You see a line of tin helmets, like dull gray mushrooms sprouting from the mud. The men beneath them are silent, eyes fixed on nothing. You're all waiting for something, anything, to change. But nothing ever does. There's an old saying passed down along the line: if the weather doesn't kill you, boredom will. You get it now. The waiting eats at you. It gnaws at the edges of your mind, the way dampness eats through fabric. The soldiers talk about home leave as if it's a myth, something that happens to other people. You've stopped believing in weeks or months. You live in hours. You live between shells. A shout goes up, duckboard's gone. You look over, and sure enough, part of the walkway has vanished into a pool of sludge. Two men wade in to retrieve it, swearing with every step. One of them slips and disappears up to his chest. The trench erupts in laughter, part horror, part hysteria, when he clambers out, covered head to toe in muck. Someone calls out, "You missed a spot." Even he laughs, though his eyes say otherwise. Your commanding officer trudges by, coat buttoned to the chin, face as pale as the fog. "Keep it together, lads," he mutters, as if that's all it takes. He's young, too young, and his voice trembles like the boards beneath his feet. You almost pity him, almost, but pity's a luxury too. By midday, the rain turns mean. It hammers down so hard the surface of the trench ripples. You can barely see the man 10 feet ahead. The water rises, inch by inch, until it spills into dugouts and rat holes alike. A few men strip to their undershirts, trying to bail it out with helmets. You don't bother. What's the point? The trench always wins. You think about the engineers who designed these narrow channels. Maybe they imagined something noble, strategic defense, modern warfare. Maybe they forgot what happens when you trap hundreds of men in a hole and let nature have its way. The result isn't a fortress, it's a swamp with delusions of grandeur. Lunch is a tin of cold stew, eaten standing because the ground's too wet to sit. The meat inside is gray, unrecognizable, and slightly shiny. Beef, someone claims. You're not convinced. You swallow anyway. Hunger isn't picky. A few rats lurk nearby, bold as thieves, waiting for leftovers. One scurries across your boot, and you don't even flinch. You're past that point. The rain eases slightly in the afternoon, leaving behind a mist that clings like breath. The landscape beyond the trench is nothing but mudflats and shattered trees. You can see the distant line of the enemy's trench, barely. It's strange how close they are. Just a few hundred meters away. Yet invisible, faceless. Sometimes you imagine what they're doing right now. Probably the same thing. Waiting. Shivering. Cursing the rain. Somewhere out there, another man sits in another ditch, wondering if you're real. A runner passes, splattered from head to toe, carrying a message from command. He doesn't stop long, just enough to hand over the paper before vanishing back into the gray. Orders, reports, nonsense. You stopped caring about the details weeks ago. The truth is simple. You're all stuck here, caught between mud and madness, until someone somewhere decides it's your turn to die. You lean against the wall, staring at the trickle of water running down the side. You wonder how many men have leaned against this same spot before you. How many didn't leave? The thought should scare you. But it doesn't. You're too tired for fear. As night creeps in, the trench takes on its usual ghostly quiet. The rain has softened to a whisper now. Like fingers drumming on a coffin lid. You can hear distant artillery again. Muffled but steady. The sound doesn't startle you anymore, it's almost comforting. In a twisted way, noise means the world's still spinning. Silence means something worse. Private Hall hums softly under his breath, a tune from home. Maybe. The melody is fragile, cracked, but it fills the air like candlelight. You close your eyes for a moment, pretending you're somewhere warm, dry, alive. You imagine the sun on your face. You imagine laughter that isn't forced. A raindrop slides down your cheek. You could almost pretend it's a tear. But tears are wasted here. The earth drinks enough of them already. The mud sighs. The guns growl. You pull your coat tighter, whispering to no one, maybe tomorrow the rain will stop. But deep down, you know better. Because in the trenches, it always rains outside. And in you, morning arrives. Though morning is generous, it's just a lighter shade of gray. The sky hangs low, pressing down on everything, and the air feels thick enough to chew. You wake to the sound of movement, boots sloshing through muck, the clink of tin mugs, and the faint scratching of something alive in the dark corner of the dugout. You already know what it is. A rat. No, not a rat, a champion. This one's the size of a small cat. Its fur slick and gleaming with rainwater and filth. It stares at you with bold little eyes that say, "You're in my house, pal." And honestly, it's not wrong. The trenches belong to them now. You shift slightly, and it scurries off toward the breakfast rations like it's clocking in for work. Breakfast. The word feels like an insult. A slab of stale bread. A spoonful of gray jam. And something that might once have been coffee but now just tastes like burned rainwater. Still, you swallow it down, because there's nothing else. Across from you, Private Hall chews slowly and says, "You know, if we feed the rats enough, they'll start bringing us food." You grin at that, but then the grin fades. It's not impossible. The rats are everywhere, in your packs, in your boots, in your nightmares. They've grown fat on the dead. Bold from survival, they bite through food tins, crawl over sleeping men, even gnaw on fingers if they're hungry enough. You once heard of a man who woke up screaming because a rat had taken a bite out of his ear. The story made everyone laugh. Nervously, but still a laugh. Humor is a shield, no matter how thin. You climb up to the firing step, peeking over the edge of the trench. Mist rolls over the battlefield like a dirty blanket. Somewhere beyond it, the enemy's trenches mirror your own. You imagine them eating the same awful breakfast, swatting at the same rats, maybe even humming the same tune. The war feels absurd that way, two sides of the same muddy mirror, each pretending they're the heroes. A whistle blows down the line, a call for inspection. You groan. Inspections are the army's favorite illusion of control. Officers trudge along the trench, checking rifles, shouting about discipline while pretending not to notice the mold growing on the walls. "Keep your weapons clean," one barks, as if clean rifles will scare off the artillery. You nod obediently. trying not to smirk. When the officer leaves, you and Hall share a glance. That man's boots, Hall mutters, have never touched real mud in their life. You snort, nearly choking on the last bite of bread. There's truth in it, though. Orders always come from somewhere clean and dry, far away from this pit of despair. Later, as the day stretches on, you find yourself on rat duty. Officially, it's trench sanitation. Unofficially, it's chasing rodents with a stick. You lift a sandbag, and 3 of them dart out, sleek, healthy, well-fed. At least someone's thriving, you mutter. Hall laughs from a few feet away, swinging his stick like a sword. Trench Olympics, he says. Event number 1. Competitive rat whacking. You both end up laughing harder than you should. It feels good, in a broken way. Laughter here doesn't fix anything, but it makes the mud feel lighter for a while. By mid-afternoon, the trench hums with quiet motion. Men write letters, clean rifles, smoke what's left of their tobacco. You take out your own scrap of paper and pencil stub. Staring at the blank page, you want to write something real. Something your family could read without hearing the sound of shells in the background. You start with, "Dear Mother, I'm well," and immediately feel the lie in it. But you keep writing anyway, not for her, but for yourself, to pretend that somewhere beyond this endless mud, life still exists. A sudden shout interrupts your thoughts. Someone's yelling about rats again. You look over and see 2 of them tugging at the same scrap of bread, bold as soldiers. Locked in a tug of war, a small crowd gathers, cheering them on like it's sport. "Come on, big one," someone shouts. "Put your back into it." When the larger rat wins and scampers off triumphantly, there's applause. For a few seconds, the trench feels like a stadium. Then a shell lands somewhere down the line, and the laughter stops. Just like that. The explosion sends a spray of mud and debris into the air. You duck instinctively, heart pounding. The sound rolls through your chest like thunder. No one moves for a moment. Then, as the echo fades, life resumes, slower, quieter, as if nothing happened. You glance at Hall. He shrugs. Breakfast show's over. He mutters. That's how it is here, chaos and routine. Hand in hand, you can go from laughter to silence in the space of a heartbeat. The war doesn't care about your timing. As evening falls, the rats return. They scuttle along the trench edges, their shadows flickering in the dim lamplight. You don't bother chasing them anymore. Let them have their feast. Tomorrow, maybe it's you they'll be chewing on. You push the thought away before it takes root. You settle into your corner, adjusting your blanket, damp and stiff. The sound of scurrying continues. A lullaby for the damned. You almost find it comforting. After all, the rats survive. They always do. You close your eyes and whisper, half joking, half serious, "Good night, Private Rat." From somewhere in the dark, you swear you hear a squeak in reply. And that's how another day ends, not with glory, but with the quiet sound of tiny feet on wet wood. The rain has eased. For once, you almost don't trust it. The silence feels suspicious, like the world is holding its breath just to trick you. Morning creeps into the trench in shades of gray and brown, everything damp, everything tired. Someone down the line coughs. Someone else hums a few notes of a song that never quite finds its rhythm. And then there's the scratching again, the ever-present whisper of tiny claws. You sigh. Breakfast time, or what passes for it. A tin of cold beans. Half a biscuit. And, if luck favors you, a scrap of something that pretends to be bacon. You can't even taste it anymore. The mud has its own flavor that seeps into everything: wood, metal, skin, memory. You sit on a crate, pulling your knees close, when something darts past your boot. You don't even flinch now, you're too used to it. But when you look down, you see the culprit, two rats, bold as bandits, dragging a piece of hardtack between them. The thing's nearly as big as their heads. You can't help but laugh. Guess it's breakfast for everyone. You mutter. Private Hall, ever the philosopher, shakes his head. They'll outlast us all, you know. Probably already have, you reply. He grins. Rats, mud, and generals, immortal creatures of war. It's a small joke, but it breaks the grayness for a moment. And in a place like this, that's worth more than gold. A runner appears suddenly, his boots splashing mud onto your sleeve. Mail call, he shouts. Instantly, heads lift, eyes brighten. For a brief moment, the trench feels human again. Letters, those thin, fragile lifelines that remind you someone still remembers your name. You wipe your hands and take the envelope. It's damp and smudged, the ink blurred by rain and time. But it's from home. You trace the handwriting with your thumb like a relic. Inside, there's not much, just words about weather. About missing you. About how the garden looks now that autumn's set in. But to you, it's everything. It smells faintly of soap and paper and something that isn't war. Hall peeks over your shoulder. Anything good? You shrug. She says the cat's getting fat. Good for the cat. You laugh. It's quiet, but it feels alive. All around, men are reading, smiling, some even crying quietly behind muddy hands. For a few precious minutes, the trench becomes a neighborhood again, a strange, broken one, but still alive. Then a voice cuts through the soft murmur. No letter for me again? It's Corporal Davies. He's been waiting for weeks. His fiancée's letters stopped coming in August, and no one has the heart to say what that might mean. Someone mutters something about postal delays. But everyone knows the truth. Sometimes letters stop because hearts stop first. Davies nods and pretends not to care. He folds his hands, stares into the mud, and hums the same tune he hums every morning. It's off-key now. You feel the weight of silence settle again. You want to say something, anything, but the words die in your throat. The rain starts again, faint and cold, as if the sky itself can't stand the quiet either. By midday, the mail is gone, and so is the brief warmth it brought. The routine returns: clean rifles, patch sandbags, watch the horizon. The monotony is comforting in its own way. Predictable misery feels safer than surprises. You lean back against the trench wall, closing your eyes for a moment. The sound of dripping water becomes rhythmic, almost musical. You imagine it's rain falling on a rooftop back home. You can almost see it, the warm light through the window. The smell of bread baking. The hum of a life that doesn't need helmets or orders. Then a whistle blows, sharp and shrill, dragging you back. You open your eyes to see a messenger waving a signal flag. Orders again. There are always orders. You glance at Hall, who rolls his eyes. Bet it's another, hold the line, masterpiece. Or maybe, you say dryly, They finally decided to move us to the Riviera. He chuckles. You'd still complain about the sand. The humor helps. It always does. Evening settles like a heavy blanket. The light fades to nothing, replaced by the faint orange glow of distant flares. Somewhere far off, artillery begins again, dull thumps rolling through the ground, shaking dust from the walls. You can feel each one in your chest, like an angry heartbeat. You stare at your letter again before tucking it carefully into your coat. You know it'll be ruined by the next rain. But for now, it's warm, it's yours. The night deepens. Men settle into uneasy sleep, each in his damp little corner. You stay awake a little longer, listening. The rain, the rats, the breathing of men who dream of home. You think of the woman who wrote that letter, her neat handwriting. Her words about the cat. Her world untouched by this madness. You imagine her looking at the same moon, maybe wondering if you're looking back. You want to believe she'd recognize you when you return. You want to believe you'll return at all. The guns thunder again in the distance. The rats scatter, and you whisper into the dark, just to hear your own voice. I'll make it home, I have to. Then, as always, you lie down in the cold mud and try to believe it. You wake before dawn, not because you want to, but because the world insists. The ground trembles faintly beneath you, the deep, distant rumble of artillery rolling over the horizon like a storm that never ends. It's strange how quickly you've come to accept that sound. Back home, thunder meant weather. Here, it means survival. If the shells are distant, you're lucky. If they're close, you won't have time to think about luck. Someone mutters, "They're starting early today." You don't answer. There's nothing to say. The gray light grows, revealing a world that looks exactly like yesterday. Mud, wire, smoke, the holy trinity of trench life. You pull your coat tighter and climb up to the firing step. The horizon flickers with flashes, like lightning. If lightning were angry and made of metal. You watch for a while, eyes half-lidded, the way one might stare into a campfire. There's an odd rhythm to it. Boom. Pause. Echo. Silence. The Shellfire Symphony. Some men call it an orchestra without a conductor. Without mercy. Without end. Hall climbs up beside you. Yawning. They say it's worse over in Ypres. He says, whole sections of the line just disappear. You nod. Lucky them. He snorts. You're twisted. You know that? Only slightly. You say, and both of you laugh. It's a dry, hollow sound, but laughter nonetheless. Another shell lands somewhere far off, sending a low vibration through the trench. You feel it in your ribs. A steady percussion beneath your heart. You try not to think about what it landed on, probably mud. Maybe men. The line between the two feels thin these days. Someone shouts for a stretcher farther down. You glance that way but stay still. The instinct to rush toward the sound died months ago. You've learned that in the trenches, heroism just means being the next one carried out. A corporal walks by, barking orders that don't quite make sense. Keep your heads down, lads. Expect counterfire. You exchange a glance with Hall. Counterfire? You mutter. Pretty sure we haven't fired yet. Shish, Hall says. Don't ruin his confidence. The shelling stops abruptly, as if the sky ran out of breath. That silence, that awful, ringing silence, is worse than the noise. You wait. every muscle tense. Because silence means something's coming. Always does. Then it happens. A distant whistle. Sharp and shrill. Another. Closer this time. You recognize the pattern before your brain fully catches up. Gas. Someone screams. You don't think. You just move. Your hands scramble for the small, rubbery mask hanging from your belt. You jam it over your face, heart hammering as you tighten the straps. The air tastes like metal and fear. Around you, others fumble, curse, some too slow. The first whiff hits, a faint, sickly sweet scent, almost pleasant for half a second before it burns. Your eyes water, throat tightens, and even through the mask, it feels like breathing knives. A greenish mist creeps across the ground, curling around boots and rifles, swallowing everything it touches. The gas moves low, hugging the earth like smoke from the underworld. You can see men coughing, clawing at their faces, stumbling blind. One drops to his knees, his mask hanging loose, eyes wide in sheer panic. You grab his arm, pull it back into place, shout something, anything, but your voice comes out muffled and warped. He nods, barely. You can't see far. The world is a fog of poison and screams. The air hums, filled with the hiss of leaking shells and the wheezing of men trying not to die. Your lungs ache, even through the filter. You wonder if it's enough, if anything is enough. Hall appears beside you, mask crooked, hands shaking. You reach over to fix it, your gloves slick with mud. He gives a thumbs up, the most absurd human gesture imaginable in a moment like this. And you almost laugh. Almost. Minutes stretch like hours. The gas drifts, thinning slowly, reluctantly, like a nightmare losing its shape. When it finally lifts, the trench looks like a ghost town. Bodies lie where they fell, faces hidden behind fogged glass and rubber. The survivors sit in stunned silence, each one staring at the ground, afraid to look anywhere else. You pull off your mask cautiously. The air tastes sharp, chemical, tainted. You cough, spitting into the mud, and it comes up dark. Beside you, Hall wheezes out a laugh that turns into a fit of coughing. "Well," he says hoarsely. "Breakfast with a hint of chlorine. 5 stars." You want to laugh too. You almost do. But then you see a man nearby, one of the younger recruits. Barely 18, slumped against the wall. Mask hanging loose. His lips tinged blue. He's staring at nothing. You kneel beside him, not sure what you're supposed to do. His hand is cold. His rifle's half buried in the mud. You want to close his eyes. But something stops you. Maybe it's superstition. Maybe it's the fear that if you touch him, some part of this place will stick to you forever. "First time for gas?" Hall murmurs, voice thin. You nod. He exhales. You never forget it. The smell stays, even in dreams. You don't answer. You can already tell he's right. That night, you lie awake, mask still beside you, its glass lenses reflecting the faint light from the stars above. You can smell the chemical tang even now. Ghostly and sour. You think of the men who didn't get their masks on in time. Of how quiet it was after. Of how the mist rolled over them like sleep. Sleep, that's what you crave, but can't find. You turn to Hall, who's staring at the same patch of sky. "You think the gas'll come back?" you ask softly. He shrugs. "Everything does, even the rain." And sure enough, A few minutes later, you hear it, the first gentle patter against your helmet. Because of course it rains. It always rains. You wake to the sound of coughing, harsh, wet, and close. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to someone who's simply caught a cold. The kind that scrapes against the air and makes everyone nearby pause for just a second before pretending they didn't hear. You blink in the half-light of dawn. Your body stiff and your throat dry. The gas attack is over. But it lingers in every breath. You sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep and grit from your eyes. The trench looks quieter than usual. Emptier too. A few figures move in the mist. Bent and tired, their motions slow, like shadows underwater. You can tell who wore their masks right, and who didn't. Private Hall is still there beside you, fiddling with his helmet strap. His face pale but alive. Morning, he croaks. If you can call it that. You reply. He tries to smile, but it turns into another cough. Smells better than yesterday. That's not saying much. You both fall silent. The air has that chemical tang again, faint, but still there. It coats your tongue like dust. The rain has stopped for now, though puddles of greenish water still shimmer in the low spots, reflecting a dull, quartz-colored sky. You wonder what poison lies in that shine. A few men are digging near the corner, not fortifying, not repairing. You don't have to ask. The shovel work is slow and careful. The kind that means they're burying someone. You recognize one of the bodies by his boots. The young recruit from yesterday. No one speaks his name. It's safer that way. Hard to believe we used to bury people in cemeteries. Hall mutters. Now we just stack them next to the soup tins. You glance at him. Better not say that in front of the chaplain. He shrugs. He's out of prayers anyway. You look away, but the words stick. Breakfast arrives, a tin of tea the color of swamp water. And some kind of salted meat that resists all attempts to chew. You take a bite, grimace, and give up. It's not the taste that gets you, it's the texture. Soft and wrong. Rats, Hall says. Deadpan. You freeze, halfway through swallowing. He smirks. Kidding, mostly. You don't ask what mostly means. As the day drags on, the trench stirs to life again, men checking rifles, patching the walls, swapping stories that are half true and half desperate invention. You listen, not because the stories are good, but because silence feels dangerous now. Silence leaves too much room for memory. A sergeant passes by, face drawn, voice hoarse. Command says hold position. Reinforcements coming next week. You don't bother to ask which week. Reinforcements always come next week. The mud is thicker today. As if the earth itself wants to keep you here. Every step takes effort. Every breath tastes like rust. You pause to adjust your gear. Then glance up at the gray sky. Somewhere above it, life continues, clean air. Open fields. People who still talk about the weather without ducking for cover. It feels impossible, like a dream you once had but forgot. A shell lands far down the line, followed by another. The ground jumps beneath your feet, and the familiar fear returns. Sharp but distant, like an old wound aching in the rain. You crouch instinctively. Though the explosions are far enough away. You've learned that doesn't matter. Even distant thunder can kill you here. When the shelling stops, you stand and realize your hands are shaking. You shove them into your pockets, pretending not to notice. Hall notices anyway. Don't worry, he says softly. They're probably just testing the range. Comforting. Hey, he adds with a half smile. At least it wasn't gas this time. The words hang there, heavy and stupid and true. You both laugh again, the kind of laugh that doesn't sound like laughter at all. Evening comes too soon and too late. As it always does. The sun doesn't really set here. It just fades behind smoke and fog until everything becomes the same dull color. You sit on your pack, watching the horizon, somewhere beyond that line, men you'll never meet are living the same day, breathing the same air, and dying for the same strip of mud. Hall lights a cigarette, shielding the flame with his hand. You ever think, he says quietly, about how all this looks from up there? From where? From heaven, or a balloon, whichever's closer. You chuckle softly, probably like ants fighting over a puddle. He exhales. Yeah, except ants have better housing. You sit together in silence for a while. The sky darkens, the stars hiding behind clouds. Somewhere down the line, someone starts singing, off-key but soft. A lullaby. Maybe. It drifts through the trench like smoke, wrapping around you both. When you finally lie down, you pull the damp blanket over your shoulders and close your eyes. The smell of gas, mud, and iron still clings to you. You tell yourself that tomorrow will be better. Not because you believe it, but because hope, like mold, grows even in the worst places. As sleep creeps in, you hear Hall's voice, low and distant. You know, he murmurs, the historians will never understand what this felt like. You smile faintly in the dark. They'll try, you whisper, but they'll never get the smell right. Then you drift off, to the sound of distant guns and the quiet scratching of rats returning for their night shift. Morning again, though you only know it by the lighter shade of gloom. The horizon glows a dull white, like old bone, and the sky presses low, smothering any hint of color. You stretch, though your joints protest. They sound like creaking wood soaked too long in water. The trench smells worse today. If that's even possible, sour mud, stale sweat, and the faint chemical ghost of yesterday's gas. You sit up slowly, blinking away sleep. Private Hall's already awake, fiddling with his bayonet, running a rag along its edge just to have something to do. He hums under his breath, the same tune from last night. His voice cracks halfway through a verse. Morning, you mutter. He nods without looking up. Still alive. Barely counts. You say. He grins. Still counts. A small victory. But you'll take it. You climb to the firing step. Peering over the sandbags. The landscape is a twisted sea of mud and wire. Broken by the occasional blackened stump. A fine mist hangs low, softening everything, but you can still make out the ridges of no man's land stretching before you. It looks peaceful from here, still. Quiet, almost gentle, but you know better. That silence out there isn't peace. It's waiting. A lieutenant appears behind you. Boots polished, impossibly polished. Considering where you are, he clears his throat. Patrol detail. We need a pair to check the wire before dusk. His tone says it isn't a request. You glance at Hall. He shrugs. Might as well stretch the legs. You sigh. Stretch them where? Into a grave? Could be worse, he says. Could be kitchen duty. He's joking, but it doesn't land. The thought of stepping out there, beyond the safety of the trench, turns your stomach. Still, you nod. Orders are orders. By late afternoon, the two of you are gearing up. The sky darkens early, clouds rolling in like bruises. The trench buzzes with quiet chatter, men offering last-minute jokes. Last-minute advice, last-minute luck. Someone presses a small tin cross into Hall's palm. He looks at it, then tucks it into his pocket without a word. When you climb over the top, the air feels colder, emptier. The ground sucks at your boots. Each step accompanied by the wet gasp of mud. You crouch low, moving slow, every breath loud inside your head. The wire ahead glistens faintly with dew or maybe blood, hard to tell anymore. Keep low, Hall whispers, and try not to look heroic. You smirk, wouldn't dream of it. You crawl forward, hands sinking into the earth. The ground here feels different, softer. Disturbed. You know why. This is where the bodies lie. Buried and unburied alike. A sleeve sticks out from the mud nearby. The cuff stiff and torn. You look away. You've learned not to recognize faces. Or even shapes. The dead deserve privacy. Halfway across, the silence cracks. A flare hisses into the air, bursting overhead in harsh white light. You freeze, pressing yourself into the mud, heartbeat slamming in your ears. The world glows for a few seconds, wire, craters, shadows, then fades again into darkness. You wait, breath held, praying the other side didn't see movement. For a moment, there's nothing. Then, a single rifle shot. The sound slices the air clean in half. Dirt sprays near your arm. Another shot. Closer. You flatten yourself further. Mud cold against your cheek. Hall hisses. They've spotted us. No kidding. You crawl backward. Slow. Deliberate. Every movement careful. The ground feels endless now. As if the trench is miles away. More shots crack in the distance. And then, silence again. That terrible, ringing silence. When you finally tumble back into your trench, you're shaking. Hall collapses beside you, breathing hard, his face smeared with grime. The lieutenant gives a curt nod. Good work. You stare at him. Good work? You repeat? We almost died. He shrugs. Then you didn't. That's good work. You want to punch him, but your arms feel too heavy. Later, as night settles, you sit with Hall near the dim lantern glow. Neither of you speaks for a while. The mud still clings to your clothes. Thick as guilt. You wipe your face, but it only spreads more dirt. Do you ever wonder, Hall finally says, why we keep doing this? You sigh, because someone told us to. Yeah, but who told them? You think about it, the generals, the politicians, the invisible hands pulling strings far from this mud. Somewhere, a man in a clean uniform will call today a success because 2 of his soldiers came back alive. He'll never smell the rot or hear the screams that almost happened. Maybe no one really knows why. You say quietly, we just keep pretending it makes sense. Hall nods slowly. Guess if we stopped pretending, we'd go mad. You chuckle softly. We already have. The lantern flickers. Somewhere in the darkness, the sound of rats scurrying blends with distant artillery, the lullaby of the Western Front. You lean back, closing your eyes, letting the rhythm of it all sink into you. The gunfire, the breathing, the faint hum of life clinging to the edge of death. You realize then that you've stopped jumping at the sound of explosions. You've stopped noticing the smell. The war hasn't ended, but it swallowed you whole, made you part of it. Somewhere above, a flare rises again, turning the world white. You watch it burn, then fade, leaving only blackness behind. See? Hall murmurs, voice barely audible. It's almost beautiful, if you forget what it means. You nod slowly, almost. Then you both sit there in silence. Two shadows in a hole, waiting for the next light to fall. When the light comes again, it's not sunlight, it's another flare. Ghostly white, painting the trench in flickering contrasts. You've stopped trying to count the days. There's no point. Days and nights blend together now, marked only by hunger, mud, and the sound of artillery in the distance. You stretch your legs and wince. Your feet feel like lumps of stone. You pull off your boots, and immediately regret it. The smell hits first, sharp and sour, followed by the sight, skin pale, swollen, almost waxy. You prod gently, and pain shoots up your leg like lightning. Trench foot. You knew it was coming, but you pretended it wasn't. Still got all 10? Hall's voice comes from beside you. He's sitting cross-legged, a cigarette dangling from his lips, smoke curling lazily upward. Barely, you mutter. He chuckles softly. Luxury. You laugh too, because if you don't, you'll start screaming. You remember the medic's lecture about keeping your feet dry, like that's even possible here. The ground hasn't been dry since the war began. The mud gets everywhere, in your clothes, under your nails, into your dreams. You pull your socks back on, still damp from yesterday, still reeking, and shove your feet into the boots again. They squelch. You don't even flinch anymore. The day drags forward. Someone down the line starts coughing again. A sound so rough it could strip bark. The medics say it's trench fever. But it could be anything. There are a dozen ways to die here that don't involve bullets. Fever, dysentery, infections, each as cruel and casual as the war itself. You walk, shuffle, down the trench, checking the boards, pretending to be useful. The smell follows you everywhere. A blend of rot, sweat, and decay. Sometimes, when the wind shifts, it brings something worse, the sweet, metallic odor of death. You've learned to recognize it instantly. You find a quiet corner and sit, leaning against the wall. The mud is cool against your back. You close your eyes for a moment, and in that fragile darkness, you imagine a hot bath, clear water, steam rising, soap, the feeling of being clean again. It's such a simple fantasy, but it hurts to think about it. A distant explosion interrupts your daydream. You open your eyes to see a cloud of dirt rising over the horizon. The sound takes a few seconds to arrive, a deep, rolling thud that makes the trench shiver. No one even reacts anymore. Explosions are as common as breathing. Think it's ours or theirs? Hall asks, appearing beside you again. You shrug. Does it matter? Only if it's close. You both sit there in silence for a while, listening to the rain begin again, soft at first, then steady, then endless. You tilt your head back and let a few drops hit your face. The rain here isn't cleansing. It's part of the war. It carries the smell of gunpowder and soil and men who'll never leave this place. Hall pulls something from his pocket, a small photograph. You've seen it before, a woman, smiling faintly, holding a baby. The edges are worn, corners bent. She's probably walking the baby by the river now. He says quietly, told me last year that the little one's first word was, sky. You smile. That's a good one. He nods. Yeah, she probably doesn't remember what mine looks like. There's no bitterness in his voice. Just distance, like he's talking about another man's life. You take a deep breath. The air thick and heavy. You'll see them again. He looks at you, then back at the photo. Sure, he says softly. Everyone sees something again eventually. The rain keeps falling. The trench starts to fill. Water creeping higher with every passing minute. You move crates and ammo boxes, trying to make space, but it's useless. Nature doesn't care about your arrangements. By late afternoon, you're standing ankle-deep in muddy water. Someone jokes about building a raft. Someone else says the trench will soon qualify as a canal. The laughter comes easy, quick, nervous, because if you don't laugh, you'll break. When night arrives, the rain finally stops, leaving behind a thick fog that clings to the earth like a second skin. You huddle in your corner, exhausted. The lantern's glow turns everything sepia. Like an old photograph. Hall's already asleep, mouth slightly open, snoring softly. You look down at your feet again, throbbing inside your boots. The pain feels almost distant now, like it belongs to someone else. You wiggle your toes, or at least you think you do. Hard to tell. You remember what the medic said, that if you ignore it long enough, the skin will turn black, and then they'll cut. You shiver, pulling your coat tighter. Outside, the guns start up again, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. You can feel it through the mud, through your boots, through your bones. You whisper to yourself, half prayer, half habit. Just one more night. It's always just one more night. You close your eyes, listening to the muffled world around you, the distant shells, the soft snoring, the drip of water. For a moment, it almost sounds peaceful, like rain on a rooftop far away. Then something scurries across your chest. You open your eyes just in time to see a rat dart into the shadows. A breadcrumb clenched in its jaws. You sigh. Good night, Private Rat. This time, you don't even bother to smile. By the time dawn crawls back over the horizon, the smell has changed. You notice it before you even open your eyes. It's thicker now, heavier. The trench always smells bad. But this is different. It's the scent of death that's had time to settle. You sit up slowly, pulling your coat tighter, though the cold has already gotten inside you. The frost hasn't melted. It clings to every surface, rifles, sandbags, even the corpses half buried near the parapet. They look almost peaceful in the pale light, dusted with white like strange statues. Almost. Hall is awake too, poking at the frozen ground with a stick. It's in the wind again. He says quietly. You nod. Yeah, can't escape it. He doesn't have to explain. The wind shifts, and suddenly it's everywhere, thick, sweet, metallic. It crawls into your nose, your mouth, your memory. The rats are quiet this morning. Even they know. A few men further down are digging, slowly, rhythmically. The sound of shovels biting into frozen earth echoes through the trench. Graves again. There's always another hole to fill. You watch them for a while, then look away. Someone lights a cigarette. The smoke cuts through the air, mixing with the smell until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. You take one when it's offered, inhaling until your chest burns. The taste is bitter, but at least it's not decay. A medic passes by, his hands red from work, his face gray from exhaustion. You stop him. How bad? You ask. He doesn't answer at first. Then, bad enough. He moves on. They always move on. The day feels endless. Every sound echoes, the crunch of boots, the scrape of metal, the dull thud of earth falling back into graves. You focus on small things just to stay sane. The texture of the wood beneath your fingers, the pattern of frost on your sleeve, the way the smoke curls when you exhale. Hall breaks the silence. You ever think about what they'll say about this? After? You glance at him. Who? The people who weren't here. The ones who'll read about it in books. Historians. Schoolteachers. The lot. You smile faintly. They'll say it was heroic. He laughs. Short and bitter. Heroic. Right. I can't even feel my feet. You both chuckle softly, but it fades too soon. There's a superstition among the men. No one talks about the smell too much. Or the dead might start to notice. It sounds ridiculous, but here, ridiculous things make sense. The line between life and memory is paper thin. Later, when the sun's at its highest, a dim gray disk behind the clouds, you're sent to check the forward trench. The wind is stronger there. Colder, too. You can see the outline of no man's land through the mist. Pockmarked and silent, a shape catches your eye, something caught on the wire. You squint. It's a body, tangled in the metal like an abandoned puppet. The uniform's unrecognizable, torn and stiff. You can't tell which side he was on. The wind rocks him gently, and the wire creaks with the sound of something trying to sing. Hall comes up beside you, staring. Can you tell? No. Doesn't matter, does it? No, you say quietly. Not anymore. You both stand there for a while, watching the wind move the dead like marionettes. Eventually, someone behind you yells for help with the sandbags. And you turn away. It's easier that way. Back in the trench, you pass a group of new recruits, fresh faces. Too clean, too curious. They look around like tourists at a graveyard. One of them tries to make a joke about the rats. No one laughs. You realize, with a dull ache, that you were one of them once. Bright-eyed, nervous, still capable of imagining glory. That person feels like someone you read about in a story long ago. By evening, the air grows heavier still. The guns have been quiet all day, and that silence presses against your skull. Even Hall, usually quick with a word or two, has gone quiet. You both sit in the dark, smoking the last of the tobacco. Finally, he speaks. You ever get used to it? The smell? You exhale slowly. You stop noticing. That's worse. He nods, staring into the fog. Maybe the smell's what keeps us human. You stop smelling it. You've stopped caring. You think about that long after he falls asleep. His breath shallow and uneven. The night stretches on, filled with small sounds, dripping water, shifting boards, distant moans. You close your eyes and listen, trying to separate one noise from another. But it's impossible. Everything blurs together. The trench breathes around you. You can feel it in the walls. The earth, the air. It's alive, in a cruel sort of way. It devours everything, hope, laughter, even the dead. You whisper, half to yourself, half to the darkness. I wonder if the earth ever gets full. The only answer is the wind, carrying that same old smell. The one you've started pretending isn't there. You wake up because someone's shaking your shoulder. It takes a few seconds for your eyes to focus. And when they do, you see the outline of a helmet, the faint orange glow of a lantern, and the familiar, grim face of Sergeant Miller. On your feet, he mutters, "Rotation duty. You in Hall, North Sector." You groan, every muscle protesting. Now? He gives you a look. You planning on going later? Move. Hall grumbles beside you, half asleep but already reaching for his rifle. You both pull yourselves upright, bones creaking like old wood, and start trudging through the narrow passage. The boards underfoot are slick with frost. The air bites harder than usual tonight, sharp, dry, metallic. The northern sector is quieter. They said, that's why it's your turn. But in the trenches, quiet doesn't mean safe. It means waiting. When you reach your post, you find two soldiers slumped together on the firing step, half dozing with rifles across their laps. One nods at you, all yours. They disappear into the dark without another word. Ghosts swapping shifts. You climb up, peer over the sandbags, and see nothing but fog. It rolls across no man's land like a living thing, thick and silver under the moonlight. Somewhere far away, a gun rumbles, distant thunder on another horizon. Hall yawns beside you, feels like we're the only ones left. You smirk faintly, maybe we are. He chuckles, wouldn't that be something? End of the world, and we get stuck babysitting the fog. You both fall silent again. The stillness is strange, beautiful. Even if you squint hard enough. For once, the battlefield looks calm, peaceful, almost. You know it's an illusion, but illusions are all that keep you going. You shift your weight, feeling the cold seep up through your boots. The wood creaks beneath you, and you pause, listening. Nothing moves, just wind, faint and thin. Funny, Hall says quietly, when I was a kid, I used to play soldier. Thought it'd be grand, mud, medals, parades. You glance at him, and now? He snorts. Now I'd trade all the medals in the world for a warm bath and socks without holes. You smile, ambitious. He laughs, low and soft, the kind of laugh that fades before it's finished. The hours pass in fragments, a cough here, a footstep there, the scrape of a shovel somewhere behind you. You start to drift, lulled by the rhythm of the wind, when something flickers in the fog. You blink. There it is again, a shadow. Faint and slow moving, maybe 50 yards out. Your body tenses before your mind catches up. Hall, you whisper, you see that? He leans forward, squinting. Could be a man, could be the fog playing tricks. You raise your rifle, but your hands hesitate. The silhouette doesn't move like a charge. It drifts, uneven. You realize what it is only when the wind shifts, and brings with it that familiar, awful smell. It's a body, another one tangled in the wire, swinging gently like a clock pendulum. You lower the rifle, exhale shakily. Jesus. Hall swallows. He's been there for days, maybe weeks. You nod, and still standing guard, by the looks of it. The two of you sit back down, saying nothing more. The fog thickens until it swallows even the wire. The dead disappear, mercifully, for now. By dawn, your fingers have gone numb. The world turns gray again. The same endless palette of filth and frost. You're relieved when the relief team finally shows up. As you head back toward the dugout, Hall stops suddenly, looking at something half buried in the mud. He kneels, brushing away the frost. It's a helmet, dented, cracked, but still intact. Not yours, not his. The emblem is foreign. German, he murmurs. You glance around, half expecting someone to shout. But there's no one. The front is quiet again. You watch as he turns it over in his hands, studying the inside. He hesitates, then places it gently on the parapet, as if returning it to the earth. Seems wrong to leave it face down. He says. You nod. Maybe he was one of the singers. Hall doesn't answer. You keep walking. By the time you reach the dugout, the sun's barely visible through the clouds, a pale coin hanging low in the sky. You drop onto your crate, pulling off your gloves, flexing your stiff fingers. You ever think, you say finally, about what's left of the world beyond this line, what it looks like now? Hall rubs his hands together for warmth. Probably cleaner, quieter. You smile weakly. Probably not better. He tilts his head. No? No, you say softly. Because we're still part of it. Whether it remembers us or not. The thought hangs there, heavy and quiet, while the trench creaks and the frost drips. You both fall silent, each lost in your own small universe of exhaustion. Somewhere far down the line, a shell explodes, distant but deep enough to shake the ground. You close your eyes and count the seconds between the blast and the echo. 1, 2, 3. Then the earth goes still again. For now, by now, the war feels like weather, something that happens around you. Unstoppable, indifferent. You don't fight it, you just endure it. The trench has become your whole world. A narrow strip of earth that smells of rust, rot, and humanity decaying in slow motion. You wake to the sound of footsteps sloshing through the mud. The air is colder than ever, the kind of cold that feels sharp enough to cut. Your breath forms small clouds that vanish instantly. The frost has returned, blanketing the trench walls in a thin sheen that glitters faintly in the weak light. Hall's already awake, rubbing his hands near a small candle stub. The flame flickers violently, trying its best to survive. You know, he says, I'm starting to think the candle's tougher than we are. You chuckle softly, at least it's useful. He grins. You ever notice how everything in this place has more purpose than we do? Rats, mud, even mold, all thriving in their own miserable way. You raise an eyebrow. Deep thoughts for this early. Sleep is overrated. You both share a faint smile. It's fragile, but real, the kind of smile that only exists between people who've seen too much together. Not long after, the sergeant appears, his voice rough as gravel. Replacements are coming through today. He says, fresh meat. Try not to scare them too much. You and Hall exchange a glance. Fresh recruits never last long. They arrive bright-eyed, smelling of soap and courage. And within a week, the mud has stolen both. When they come, there are 6 of them, boys. Mostly. One can't be more than 16. They shuffle into the trench, eyes darting around like trapped birds. The youngest catches your stare and straightens his posture. Trying to look brave, you almost laugh, but it comes out as a sigh instead. "Welcome to paradise," Hall says, voice dry. They don't know whether to smile or not. The sergeant gives them a quick tour. "That's the latrine. Don't fall in it. That's the firing step. Try not to die on it." And then leaves them to you. You take pity and show them how to pack sandbags, how to listen for incoming shells, how to tell the difference between a rifle crack and a mortar's whine. They nod, too quickly, pretending they understand. One of them keeps asking questions, good ones, naive ones. "Is it true we'll go over the top soon? Do the Germans use bayonets? How do you sleep with all the noise?" You almost answer honestly. Instead, you say, "You get used to it." That's the biggest lie you've ever told. Later, when the day darkens, you sit with Hall near the dugout entrance. The recruits huddled together, trying to stay warm, whispering nervously. One of them pulls out a small notebook and starts sketching. You catch a glimpse, a crude drawing of the trench. The men, the endless wire. It's almost beautiful. "Poor kid," Hall murmurs. "Still sees the world in lines and shapes. We stopped seeing it at all." You nod. "Give him a week. He'll be drawing ghosts like the rest of us." The evening passes quietly. Too quietly. The guns haven't fired in hours. And that kind of silence never means peace. It's a waiting silence, one that hums at the edges of your nerves. Sure enough, the first shell lands just after dusk. It hits somewhere down the line, a flash, a boom, then screaming. Everyone moves at once. You shout for the new boys to get down. And they do, though not fast enough. Mud and debris rain down, filling the air with dust and panic. When it stops, there's shouting. The recruits look around, faces white, hands trembling. One vomits into the mud. Another just sits there, eyes wide, as if his mind hasn't caught up yet. You know that look. Everyone gets it once. Hall pulls himself up, brushing off the dirt. "Congratulations, lads," he says grimly. "You've been baptized." No one laughs. As the night stretches on, you patrol the line. The air still trembles from the bombardment. Somewhere in the dark, you can hear groaning, faint, human. You can't tell if it's coming from your side or theirs. You stop at the parapet, resting your rifle against the sandbags. The stars are out tonight, faint, trembling dots of light in a sky that feels much too big. You used to like stars. Now they just look like holes in a black sheet, leaking light from some world you can't reach. Hall joins you a minute later. Quiet for once. "They're learning fast," he says. "They have to." He nods slowly. "Think any of us are getting out?" You shrug. "Out of this trench? Maybe. Out of this war? Doesn't seem likely." He sighs. "Guess I'll postpone that bar opening. Then." You almost smile, but you're too tired for it. The wind changes, bringing with it that same terrible smell from no man's land. You breathe through your scarf, eyes stinging. The new recruits stir in their sleep, one mumbling something about home. You look at them for a long time. Their faces still soft, untouched by the full weight of it all. You envy them, not for their youth, but for their ignorance. You close your eyes and whisper, "Sleep while you can, boys." Because morning always comes too soon. The morning begins with a letter, or what's left of one. A muddy envelope, torn at the corner, handed to you by a runner who doesn't even stop walking. You brush off the dirt, careful not to tear the paper any further. It's from home, from her. You open it slowly, half afraid the words will crumble. It's short, just a few lines. She says she's fine. The garden's grown wild. The neighbor's boy enlisted. She misses you. There's a smudge near the end, maybe from the rain, maybe from a tear. She signs it the same way she always did. Yours. Until the world makes sense again. You read it twice, then fold it carefully, sliding it into your coat pocket. You try not to think about her too much, how her voice would sound, how her hands felt when they brushed the dirt from your uniform before you left. Thinking of her hurts in a way that bullets don't. Hall watches you, chewing a piece of stale bread. Letter from home? Yeah. She's still writing? You nod. For now. He smiles faintly. Lucky man. You shrug. She thinks I'm somewhere safer than I am. I haven't told her about the mud that eats your boots. Hall laughs softly. No one would believe it anyway. The trench is restless today. The sky hangs low, the air heavy with the promise of rain, or worse. The recruits are learning the rhythm of waiting. Their earlier bravado worn down into quiet obedience. You catch one of them, the artist, sketching again. This time a portrait of Hall. It's crude, but surprisingly gentle. Hall pretends not to notice, though he adjusts his pose slightly. Around midday, a rumor drifts down the line. Mail deliveries have stopped for the northern sector. Some say the route was bombed. Others say the mail carriers refused to go any farther. The men joke about it, but there's a tightness behind the laughter. Letters are the only proof that life exists beyond this hole. Without them, it's too easy to forget you ever had a life at all. By afternoon, the rain begins, not the endless drizzle you've come to expect, but a cold, hard downpour that turns the trench into a river. The water rises fast. Men scramble to save their gear, piling sandbags, digging new drainage channels. It's hopeless. You're ankle deep in muck within minutes. And soon after, it's up to your shins. Guess the Germans won't need to drown us, Hall says, shouting over the storm. You grin grimly. Why waste the ammunition? The new recruits panic at first, then follow your lead, moving as best they can. You can see the fear in their eyes, the realization that even the sky is against them. By nightfall, the trench has become a swamp. The candles won't stay lit. The rations are soggy. Everything smells of rot and wet metal. You sit on your crate, coat plastered to your skin, staring into the dark. Hall sits beside you, lighting what's left of a cigarette. The ember glows like a tiny sun between you. You ever think, he says quietly, we're already dead, and this is just what comes after? You chuckle softly. If it is, the afterlife's got a cruel sense of humor. He nods, flicking ash into the mud. I used to think death was loud. You know, guns, explosions, final words. But here, it's just slow, quiet, like falling asleep in the rain. You don't reply. He's right, and you both know it. A sudden flash splits the night, followed by a deep, rolling thunder. For a heartbeat, everything glows, the wire, the mud, the faces of the men, and then it's dark again. You can't tell if it was lightning or artillery. You don't care anymore. The rain doesn't stop. It drums endlessly, filling every space, drowning every thought. You close your eyes, listening to it. Somewhere deep inside, a small, fragile part of you still hopes it might wash everything clean, the blood, the noise, the fear. But it never does. You reach into your pocket, feeling the letter there. The paper's damp now, edges soft. You pull it out anyway, reading it again by the faint light of Hall's cigarette. Yours, until the world makes sense again. You smile, though it hurts. She'll be waiting a long time. You whisper. Hall glances over. What's that? Nothing, you say. Just the world being what it is. You fold the letter carefully, tuck it back into your coat, and stare out at the black horizon. The rain continues to fall. Steady, relentless, like time itself refusing to stop. And in that moment, you realize something simple and cruel. The war isn't trying to kill you. It's trying to make you forget what living feels like. It's still raining when morning comes, if you can call it morning. The sky hasn't changed in days. The same dull gray that smothers everything beneath it. You wake to the sound of dripping water and the soft groan of wood giving way under the weight of the flood. The trench isn't a trench anymore. It's a canal, and you're living in it. You sit up, your back stiff, your blanket soaked through. The water comes up to your knees now. You can't feel your feet at all. Hall's sitting opposite you, his coat pulled tight, his expression somewhere between a grin and a grimace. Think we should start charging rent? He says. We've basically got waterfront property. You laugh, weakly, but genuinely, with a view, too, just needs a boat and a sense of humor. He points at a floating helmet bobbing past. Boats sorted. The recruits look worse than you remember. The youngest one, the artist, has a fever. His cheeks are flushed, his eyes glassy. You crouch next to him. Press a hand to his forehead. He's burning. Trench fever. Hall says quietly. He'll need a medic. You shake your head. There's no medic left on this line. Not till resupply. Hall curses under his breath. The boy looks up at you, trying to smile. I'm fine, he whispers. Just tired. You nod. Get some rest. It's a lie, but lies are merciful here. A few feet away, two soldiers are arguing over a piece of bread. You don't intervene. Hunger does strange things to people. You're all animals now, scratching and biting your way through another day. At some point, a whistle blows, signaling another ration run. You climb out of the dugout and wade through the trench, the mud dragging at your legs like hands. When you reach the distribution point, the cook's ladling something that looks like stew but smells like regret. He hands you a tin. Eat quick, he mutters. Rain's turning it into soup. You thank him. Take a spoonful. It's cold before it reaches your mouth. You eat it anyway. You've stopped caring what things taste like. Food means fuel, and fuel means one more hour of breathing. Back in the dugout, Hall's lighting a cigarette with damp matches. It takes him 5 tries. When the flame finally catches, he hands it to you first. One drag, he says, for morale. You take it, inhale deeply, and hand it back. The smoke burns your throat. Sharp and familiar. You ever wonder? You say, how long before we stop hoping? Hall exhales slowly. We already did. We just haven't noticed. You nod. The truth feels heavier than your rifle. Outside, the sound of shellfire rumbles again, far off. But steady. The recruits flinch. Their fear still new. Still raw, you and Hall barely react. You've learned to measure distance by the tone of the explosions. Close enough to hear the whistle? Worry. Just a dull thud? Keep eating. As the day drags on, the fever worsens. The boy starts to shiver uncontrollably. Mumbling in his sleep, you recognize a few words: home, mother, sky. You stay by him for a while. Unsure what to do, you've stopped believing in remedies. By nightfall, the rain finally slows. The air feels thicker now, heavy with rot. You hear the low hum of flies. Faint but growing, the bodies buried too shallow or surfacing again. The mud coughing them back up like bad memories. You look away, pressing your scarf to your face. Hall breaks the silence. Remember the truce? He asks suddenly. You do. The singing, the laughter, the shared cigarettes under the stars. It feels like a story someone told you long ago. Yeah, you say softly. Almost thought we were human again. He chuckles. But it's hollow. Maybe that was the mistake. The lantern flickers, casting long shadows across the wall. You watch them dance for a while, two figures swaying like ghosts. The boy stirs again, eyes half open. His voice is faint, barely a whisper. I was drawing before I came here. You lean closer. What did you draw? Birds, he says, always flying away. You don't know what to say to that. You just sit there, listening to his breathing grow slower, quieter, until it stops. Hall looks over, jaw tight. Neither of you moves. The trench has seen too much for tears. You pull the blanket over the boy's face, then sit back down. Outside, the rain starts again, soft this time, almost gentle, as if the sky itself is mourning. You light another cigarette, the smoke curling upward, disappearing into the dark. He'll be flying now, you murmur. Hall nods. Better him than us. You both fall silent. The world shrinks back to the rhythm of dripping water, distant thunder, and the quiet hiss of smoke fading into cold air. Somewhere far away, another shell lands. The earth trembles, briefly alive, then still again. And you realize something cruelly simple. The dead are the only ones here who've truly escaped. You wake to the sound of a whistle, sharp and shrill, cutting through the early fog like a blade. For a split second, your mind can't place where you are. Then the smell hits: mud, smoke, decay, and you remember. You're still here, still in the same hole in the ground, surrounded by the same dying world. Up, up, stand to. Someone shouts down the line. Boots splash, rifles clatter. Men stumble from their dugouts, blinking against the pale light. You grab your weapon, your body moving before your brain catches up. Habit, that's all you are now. A collection of habits pretending to be a man. Hall's beside you, strapping on his belt with one hand, the other still bandaged. Guess we're due for our daily dose of hell, he mutters. You climb to the firing step, peering over the parapet. The horizon is a bruise, gray, swollen, alive with distant flashes. The shelling hasn't started yet, but you can feel it coming, like pressure in your chest before a storm. The lieutenant walks past, trying to sound brave. Hold the line, lads. We've got this. His voice cracks halfway through, betraying the lie. You glance at Hall, and he smirks. We've got this, he repeats in a mock accent. He says it like we misplaced our keys. Not half the battalion. You grin despite yourself. Humor is oxygen here. Without it, you'd suffocate. The air goes still. Then, thump, a single shell lands somewhere ahead, shaking the boards under your boots. Another follows. Then another. The rhythm builds. A slow crescendo. You hunch low, teeth clenched. As the sky erupts in sound and light, the ground heaves. The air thickens. And for a moment, you can't tell where the sky ends and the earth begins. You've been through hundreds of bombardments by now, but they never get easier. Each one feels like the world breaking all over again. The noise isn't just heard, it's felt, vibrating through your bones, pounding against your ribs. A man near you screams as a board gives way, sending a wall of mud collapsing over him. You and Hall dig frantically, hands slipping, coughing through the dust. You pull him free, gasping. His eyes are wide, unseeing. You check his pulse anyway, though you already know. Hall wipes his face with a shaking hand. "That's Davies," he says quietly. "He just got a letter yesterday." You nod, because what else can you do? The war has a cruel sense of timing. The shelling finally stops. The silence that follows is worse. You climb back onto the step, staring out at the churned horizon. No Man's Land looks even more broken now. The wire twisted, the craters overlapping like wounds that never heal. Then comes the whistle, the other kind, the one that means go. Over the top, the lieutenant screams. You don't think, you just climb, boots slipping, fingers clawing at the wet earth. You haul yourself out and run. The air turns to fire. Bullets slice past with a sound like tearing paper. You drop low, mud splashing into your mouth. Around you, men are falling, one by one, silent and quick. You crawl forward because backward isn't an option. Hall's voice cuts through the chaos. Left, stay low. You follow him, your hands sinking into something warm. You don't look to see what. Ahead, a crater offers cover. You dive in, landing hard. The smell hits instantly, blood, smoke, rot. You gag but stay down. Hall slides in beside you, panting. "Well," he says between breaths, "this is cozy." You laugh once, short, breathless, almost hysterical. 5-star accommodations. The firing continues above, endless and blind. You wait. That's all there is to do. Wait. And hope the next bullet isn't yours. After what feels like hours, the gunfire slows. You risk a glance over the edge. The battlefield is a blur of smoke and movement. You can't tell who's winning. You're not even sure what winning means anymore. Hall looks at you. "Think we're supposed to move?" You shake your head. "Think we're supposed to stay alive." A lull settles, thin and trembling. The air hums with the memory of noise. You lean back against the crater wall, eyes closed, trying to breathe through the mud in your throat. Then you hear it, a faint sound, almost too soft to notice. A voice. In the distance, someone calling for help. Hall hears it too. "No Man's Land," he says. "One of ours?" You listen again. The voice comes again, weaker now. "Please." Without a word, Hall starts climbing out of the crater. You grab his arm. "You're insane. We can't." "He's alive," Hall says simply. "That's reason enough." You want to argue. You don't. Instead, you follow. The two of you crawl through the mud, inch by inch, keeping low. The fog hides you. For now, the voice grows louder, desperate. You find him near a tangle of wire, a soldier. Chest torn open, eyes wild. He can't be more than 19. Hall kneels beside him, whispering something you can't hear. You cover their backs. Scanning the horizon, the boy grabs Hall's sleeve. His hand slick with blood. "Don't leave me." "We won't," Hall says, voice steady. But you both know you can't carry him back. He's already fading. The boy exhales once, shudders, and goes still. You stare for a long time. Then Hall reaches out, closing the boy's eyes. "At least he didn't die alone," he murmurs. The words hit harder than the shells. You nod, throat tight. You drag yourselves back through the mud, every muscle screaming. When you finally collapse inside the trench again, you're shaking. The lieutenant's shouting something about regrouping, about casualties, but you don't listen. Hall sits beside you, silent, eyes fixed on nothing. His hand is trembling. "You know what's funny?" he says softly. "I didn't even ask his name." You want to say something comforting, but there's nothing left to say. The rain starts again, slow and steady. You lean your head back against the wall and close your eyes. The war rumbles in the distance, patient and eternal. And you think, if hell had a heartbeat, it would sound like this. When the guns stop, the silence doesn't return, it just hides. There's a low ringing in your ears, the echo of every shell that's fallen since dawn. You sit slumped against the wall, eyes half open, heart still thudding like it hasn't learned the difference between living and surviving. The trench is wrecked, planks torn apart, sandbags ripped open, the smell of smoke hanging in the air like a ghost that refuses to leave. You can taste it, metallic and bitter. The world looks like it's been erased and rewritten in shades of brown and gray. Hall limps past you, face streaked with dirt, his arms bleeding again, the old wound torn open. He waves it off before you can say anything. "Just another scratch," he says, forcing a grin. His voice sounds too light for the weight in his eyes. You hand him a strip of cloth anyway. "You'll run out of arms to scratch soon." He smirks. "Then I'll use yours." It's the closest thing to laughter you've heard all day. The lieutenant appears, mud up to his knees, shouting something about holding the position and expecting counterfire. No one moves faster because of it. You all just nod automatically. You've learned that in war, obedience is mostly a way to keep pretending there's order in chaos. A few of the new recruits didn't make it. Their helmets sit in a neat row near the dugout, 5 of them, lined up like trophies for a god that never asked for them. You look away before the faces come back to you. By noon, the rain starts again. It always does. It's a different kind now, colder, quieter. It falls without malice, like the sky's simply forgotten how to do anything else. You and Hall stand under a torn sheet of canvas, waiting for rations that may or may not come. "You ever think," Hall says, "how weird it'll be to sleep in a bed again?" You glance at him. "If we live long enough to try." He nods. "Yeah, guess I'd just end up sleeping on the floor. Too used to dirt." You don't answer. You're thinking the same thing. When the rations finally arrive, they're little more than crumbs and lukewarm tea. Someone tries to joke about the fine cuisine, but no one laughs this time. Hunger isn't funny anymore. It's just part of the landscape. You eat in silence. The food tastes like nothing. Everything does. You wonder if you'll ever taste again real food. real air, anything that doesn't smell of rust and fear. That afternoon, the sun pushes weakly through the clouds. It's the first you've seen it in days. The light spills over the battlefield, turning the puddles gold for a few fleeting minutes. You catch yourself staring, almost mesmerized. It looks beautiful, wrongly beautiful. Hall notices. Careful, he says. Start admiring it and you'll forget it's killing us. You smirk. Beauty's got bad manners. He chuckles. Yeah, always showing up uninvited. You both stand there, watching the light die slowly as the clouds roll back in. When evening comes, a few men start muttering prayers under their breath. You're not sure if they still believe, or if the words have just become another habit. You listen anyway, not for faith, but for the rhythm of human voices that still sound alive. The wind picks up, the scent of gunpowder rides on it. Sharp and familiar. You feel it before you hear it, the deep, slow thunder of artillery warming up again. Hall sighs. Didn't even make it through dinner this time. You tighten your grip on your rifle. Guess the world remembered we're still breathing. The first shell lands far away. A dull rumble. The next is closer. The trench shudders like a living thing. You duck instinctively as dirt rains from the ceiling. Here we go again, Hall mutters. You crawl back to your post. Every movement automatic. The noise rises, endless. Merciless. You press your back to the wall. Close your eyes. And try to imagine something else. Anything else. You picture a field, real grass. Not mud. The sound of wind instead of artillery. Her voice, soft and distant, saying your name like it still means something. Then the wall shakes again, and the illusion cracks. Hours, or minutes, later, the bombardment ends. Smoke drifts through the trench like mist. You and Hall check for survivors. Most are still breathing, some are not. You sit down, exhausted. The world smells like burnt wood and blood. You light a cigarette with shaking hands. The flame trembling in the wind. Hall sits beside you, staring at nothing. You ever think, he says softly, maybe the war's already over. And we just haven't been told yet? You exhale, the smoke mixing with the fog. If it is, you say, it forgot to take us with it. He nods, silent. The sky rumbles again in the distance, promising more. And once more, you wait, because that's all there is left to do. You don't dream anymore. Sleep just feels like black water, something you sink into, not something that heals. When morning comes, you wake with mud on your hands and no memory of falling asleep. The air is damp again, the world gray as ever. You stretch, bones creaking like old timber, and wonder how much longer a body can keep going before it decides it's had enough. Hall's awake already, crouched near the fire pit, coaxing a few flames out of scraps of wood and torn sandbags. The smoke curls low and lazy, smelling faintly of oil. Morning, you say. He snorts. Is it? Feels more like a rerun. You sit beside him, holding your hands near the tiny fire. The heat barely reaches your fingers. But you pretend it does. Pretending has become a survival skill. A few men down the line are repairing the wall with shovels and curses. Others just sit, staring at nothing, eyes glazed. You don't blame them. There's nothing left to see that isn't mud or misery. A runner appears, sliding through the trench with a crumpled sheet of paper in hand. Orders, he shouts, waving it like a victory flag. We're rotating out tonight. New company coming in. For a second, no one moves. Then it sinks in. The noise that follows isn't cheer, it's relief. Raw and fragile. Some men laugh. Some cry quietly. You just sit there, blinking, as if the words are too heavy to believe. Hall grins weakly. You hear that? We're leaving this hole. You shake your head. I'll believe it when my boots hit dry ground. The rest of the day drags. The officers bark about maintaining discipline and orderly withdrawal. But no one listens too closely. You spend the hours packing what little you own, mud-caked uniform. Broken shovel. That damp letter folded in your coat pocket. You touch it once more. Just to feel something that isn't war. As the light fades, the sound of artillery begins again, not near you this time, but far enough to remind you what you're leaving behind. The earth trembles softly, like it's sighing. You move through the trench one last time. Every step a memory. There's the spot where Hall slipped and cursed for 10 straight minutes. The corner where the rats built their kingdom. The patch of wall where someone carved the words "still breathing." You run your fingers over it. The letters rough under your glove. Think anyone'll miss this place? Hall asks. You smile faintly. Only the rats. Darkness falls by the time the relief unit arrives. Fresh faces. Clean boots. The smell of soap and optimism. You can't look at them for long. They remind you too much of what you used to be. Any advice? One of them asks. Voice uncertain. You pause, searching for words that won't sound cruel. Don't look up, you say finally. There's nothing up there worth seeing. He frowns but nods. You move on. The march out begins in silence. You climb from the trench for the last time. Boots sinking into the familiar muck. The rain's stopped, but the sky still weeps, a low mist rolling across the fields. The air smells of earth and smoke and endings. You glance back once. The trench lies quiet behind you. Its edges dark and soft under the moonlight. It almost looks peaceful now. Like it's resting, but you know better. The trench doesn't rest. It just waits for the next batch of souls. Hall walks beside you, his limp more noticeable now. What'll you do first? He asks. Sleep somewhere dry, you say. Eat something that doesn't come out of a tin. He laughs softly. Ambitious dreams. I like it. You walk for hours. The ground uneven. The world strangely silent. Every step feels wrong, too open, too free. After so long trapped underground, the air feels almost too big. You keep glancing over your shoulder, half expecting to see the trench pulling you back. Finally, you reach the transport point, a line of wagons and weary horses waiting in the mud. The officer in charge waves you forward, ticking names off a list. You climb aboard, sitting on the rough wooden bench, the cold seeping through your coat. As the cart jolts forward, you look back one last time. The battlefield stretches behind you, an endless scar under the dim sky. You can't tell where the living end and the dead begin. Hall nudges you gently. We made it, he says. You nod. For now. The cart creaks onward, wheels groaning in the mud. The wind carries the faint echo of distant gunfire. Fading with every mile, you exhale slowly, the tension in your chest loosening for the first time in months. But you don't feel free. Not yet. You feel hollow. Like the trench carved something out of you that won't grow back. You glance up at the stars. They're faint tonight, but they're there. For the first time in a long time, you whisper a quiet thought to no one. Let this be the last road out. The road stretches out before you, silent and endless, cutting through a landscape that looks almost peaceful if you squint hard enough. The fields are barren now, pockmarked and scarred, but they're still fields. No wire, no guns, no shouting, just the wind moving through grass that dares to grow again. The wagon jolts over a rut, snapping you back to the present. Hall winces, clutching his side. You'd think, after inventing artillery, someone would have figured out suspension. He mutters. You chuckle softly. Comfort's a peacetime luxury. The horses snort, their hooves sucking at the wet earth with every step. The sound feels hypnotic, rhythmic, almost soothing. Around you, men sit slumped in silence, too tired even to talk. The smell of gunpowder has faded from your clothes, replaced by the simple scent of rain and mud. It's strange how clean the world smells once you leave death behind. A village appears in the distance, or what's left of one. Roofs caved in, windows shattered, chimneys standing like broken teeth. You roll past slowly. A few villagers stand near the road, faces pale and unreadable. They watch the wagons pass but don't wave. You don't blame them. Soldiers bring ghosts wherever they go. When you finally stop, it's near a makeshift camp, a collection of tents. Smoke from cook fires rising into the gray sky. An officer reads from a list, assigning sleeping quarters and duties. You barely hear him. You're focused on the small miracle of solid ground beneath your boots. You find a spot near the edge of camp and drop your pack. Your legs ache, your shoulders burn, but you don't care. For the first time in months, you're not surrounded by walls of mud. You can see the horizon, wide and open. It feels wrong, almost terrifying, but you force yourself to breathe it in. Hall lowers himself beside you, grinning. Smell that? Smoke and wet socks? No, he says. Freedom, or something pretending to be it. You smile faintly. Can't tell the difference anymore. A cook passes by, ladling soup into tin cups. It's hot, real, and it tastes like heaven, or maybe just like warmth. You eat slowly, savoring every mouthful, trying to remember what it feels like to be human. Later, as dusk settles, the camp glows soft and golden under the lamplight. Somewhere, someone's playing a harmonica, a thin, wavering tune that drifts through the air like smoke. It's not cheerful, but it's alive. You lean back against your pack, staring at the sky. It's been so long since you saw it unobstructed. Stars scatter across it, faint but countless. For months, you only saw them in fragments, peeking through the cracks above the trench. Now, the whole sky is open again, vast and terrifying. Hall lies down beside you, his arm tucked under his head. You think it's really over? You hesitate. For us, maybe, but not for everyone else. He nods slowly. Yeah, wars end on paper long before they end in people. You sit in silence, listening to the harmonica fade into the wind. Around you, the camp quiets, soft voices. The rustle of canvas, the sighs of men who finally allow themselves to feel tired. You take out the letter. The one you've carried through mud and blood and rain. The edges are frayed, the ink blurred, but you can still read the last line. Yours. Until the world makes sense again. You whisper it aloud, letting the words drift away on the breeze. The world still doesn't make sense. Maybe it never will. But tonight, at least, it's still turning. That's enough. Hall's breathing slows beside you. He's already asleep, mouth slightly open, a faint smile ghosting his lips. You envy him for that. The ability to sleep like he's safe. You lie back and close your eyes. The earth is cold but solid beneath you. The wind brushes your face. Gentle, almost kind. You imagine her voice in it. Soft and distant, saying your name. Somewhere behind you, far away now, the guns are still firing. But their echoes are faint, swallowed by distance and time. The world is already forgetting the sound. You open your eyes once more, gaze at the stars, and think of all the men still down there, in the trenches, dreaming of this same sky. Maybe that's what survival really means, not escaping the war, but carrying its memory gently enough that it doesn't destroy what's left of you. You breathe in, slow and steady, and feel the weight of it all settle quietly inside. The night deepens, the firelight flickers, your eyes grow heavy. And for the first time in forever, you let yourself drift, not into fear, but into rest. The last thing you hear is the wind whispering through the trees. Soft and endless, like the earth itself humming you to sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.